There's the need for space for you.
Good afternoon. The time is now 3:02 p.m. We will call to order a regular meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration. This is our pre-certification meeting. Again, calling that meeting to order at 3:02 p.m. At this time, I invite everyone that's willing and able to rise with me to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All members of the board should have received a copy of our agenda for this meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda? Yes. Does anyone have any comments or proposed revisions to the agenda? Hearing none, I will accept a motion or entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the agenda. All of those in favor, or if you'll just say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? The agenda is approved. The first item on today's agenda is a ballot adjudication. I think with that, we will hear from you, Director Fall.
Thank you. So the first page in your packet at the top is this provisional board meeting for approval. So we have 5 ballots we need to review that were voted provisionally. So we'll go one by one, and this board will need to vote to determine whether or not we count. So the first is, the reason is other, and this is at precinct VGO1. So the voter registered to vote in the Vote Safe program, which is where people who have restraining orders or victims of domestic violence can have their addresses removed from the voter roll. She called multiple times to the office, wanting to know how she could vote with a protective order and have her address still protected. She said that she was scared to vote because she didn't want her address out there. She came to the office, filled out the Vote Safe application after the registration deadline. We asked the SOS if we could register her with no response. This is why she voted provisionally, because she was worried that if she voted regularly that it would get on the rolls. With this one, if she is a registered voter, it's just that she's worried about what's going to happen when the vote is counted. So if the board votes, you still have to vote to approve it since she voted provisionally. But we won't process this voter until I personally speak with the election director and make sure that is taken care of. That her Vote Safe application is processed before we give her voter credit.
Okay. So a couple of questions. You said that she completed or registered for her Vote Safe application after the October 7th registration deadline?
Yeah, so she had already submitted her voter registration,
Right.
but she didn't provide the Vote Safe application until after, which those two things shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just haven't been processed. by the Secretary.
So she was registered in time.
Correct.
That you could change the vote safe anytime. I mean, that needs to be flexible.
I would tend to think so. Does anyone else have any questions for Director Fall with regard to this proposed?
I do.
Yes.
She provided all the appropriate paperwork to get the vote safe.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw this.
Okay.
And so to be certain, Director Fall, you indicated that you would reach out to the SOS. Let's confirm what the inquiry will be with, I presume, Blake Evans, the director.
Yes.
What will your inquiry of him be?
I'll let him know what happened and make sure that the state processes her Vote Safe application before we give her voter credit.
Okay.
That way her name and address won't appear on the list of the number list of voters.
Okay, so that's just about timing for when we issue her credit, not for any confirmation, because if it were to be for confirmation, it would appear that our vote would be contingent upon some type of approval for him. That's not what we're suggesting.
No, we can go ahead and vote to allow us to process her ballot, and then I'll personally assign her credit once I have confirmation from the Secretary of State, so we'll hold her voter credit until we have that.
Okay,
Why would we hold the voter credit?
Because then she'll appear on the numbered list of voters, and if her vote-based application hasn't been processed yet, than her.
But why wouldn't we process it? Because.
We
it's
don't
that-
process the vote save applications, the Secretary of
I would
State.
have to, do we have a code, Daniel, on vote save?
There is a code.
But it sounds like,
I would.
notwithstanding the fact that she submitted her vote safe application, that's submitted to our office. And then we, pass it along to the Secretary of State for processing, correct?
Yes.
Why would we put a deadline on vote save?
There is.
I don't believe there is a deadline on vote.
My-
Well, I think it's when, if we go ahead and give her credit now, if we go ahead and give her credit now, her current address would be there. Available on the,
So I didn't word that correctly. Why wouldn't we go ahead and process that vote save?
we don't process it, the Secretary of State does.
Well, that could be next year.
Right, well, and that's why I wanted to inquire with Ms. Fall about,
Get it in time for the 26th election. Okay. Okay, got it.
but to the earlier point that's been made in prior communication, the recording of her vote is a function of the scan. Her participation in receiving credit as having in her voter history is a function of Director Fall assigning credit. I
I
believe,
didn't realize Secretary of State had to approve vote save. Okay.
We're gonna take them one at a time, or we just wanna go through the 5 and then?
I
and
think
then-
because they're all different, we may want to take them one at a time.
Yeah.
I don't know the content of them, Director Fall, you know the content of each, so,
The last two are similar,
okay.
but we can take them one at a time just to keep it straight.
Good deal.
Are we gonna vote on
I was
one
just,
at a time?
yeah, that's what we were saying, taking them up one at a time to vote on them one at a time because they all seem to be different.
I think that's the best.
Is there a okay, go ahead.
Yes, I will move to process that ballot.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve this provisional ballot. All of those in favor, if you'll just say yay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Go on to the next one, please.
So the next one is HR 01. So this was someone who, first time Georgia voter, and she left with her ballot thinking that that was her receipt. And then was talking to her coworker and they were like, you should have scanned that. And so she came back and asked to scan it. We obviously wouldn't allow someone to scan a ballot that we didn't know for sure was ours, or if it was a copy. So we canceled that ballot and then we had our voter provisional ballot. So when we looked at our final numbers, I know I don't have it on the sheet I gave you guys, so I apologize. We were at poll pad check-ins was 496. And the scanner was at 495, so we are one short, so, with that in mind, we believe that she really did walk off with her ballot and she didn't stick in and somehow get a copy of it, so, the staff recommendation would be to accept this ballot.
Okay, and to be certain, what date was, let me not assume, I'll just ask the question. The date on which she initially, walked out with the ballot, is that or is that not the same date?
It's all election day.
Election day.
The previous one was, AIP,
AIP.
but the rest are election day.
The rest are election day, I chose. No worries. And did we check the voter oath receipts?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, yes,
and
you
so we
definitely-
located, we know for certain that she checked in earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Director Fall with regard to this one? If there are no further questions or no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve this provisional ballot.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the provisional ballot. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? The motion carries.
Great, so the next one is, all of the forms to process the, provisional ballot are located inside the envelope. We normally don't open the envelope unless it's been approved, so we just need approval to open the envelope and then process this voter. It looks like it is an out of precinct ballot, so we would just need to duplicate it and put it into the correct precinct, but we can't open the stamped envelope unless the board approves, so.
Okay, so once we, assuming we, go ahead.
How did it make it to the salmon? They
the provisional clerk of this precinct just folded them all up, I guess, and put them all in there together instead of keeping them separate. And they let us know that they did that. They confirmed with us what they did.
Okay. And we know that it's one ballot that's in there?
Yes, it's just this one affected voter
Okay.
and her voter registration number is on the front. She filled out this one.
Okay. And it was an out of precinct?
Mhm.
And so do we know that it was submitted, or the ballot was submitted within that 2-hour timeframe at the end of the day?
Yes.
Into the voting?
That's what the paperwork shows.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Respected?
How do you know what the paperwork shows if it's all inside the ballot?
It's on the outside of the envelope as well. So they mark the provisional code on the outside of the envelope.
Anything further from anyone on this one? Is there a motion to approve the opening of the ballot and subsequent, or opening of the envelope and subsequent approval of the ballot?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve opening and accepting this ballot. Is all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right, you said that these two are similar, the final?
Yes, so the same scenario, different precincts. Both of these showed the voter when they checked in as already voted. We know we've had issues with the poll pad this election, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So they had them vote provisionally because it showed them as already voted. But at the end, we were one less on the scanner than we were on the poll pad, so they believed that there was an error when the poll worker was checking them in, and that it caused them to either glitch, which we've seen, and then it checks them in without fully going through. So we only have one voter certificate instead of, they would be able to cancel and check them back in. So per the staff's reconciliation on the numbers, the recommendation would be to accept these ballots as well.
Okay, and that's the same situation on the second one in SMO3?
Yes.
Does anyone have questions with respect to these two situations?
These were both on election day.
Yes,
So they filled out a provisional
yes, because they were shown as already voted in the poll pad.
and they voted how the first time?
They just there, so they believe that when they were
In
checking
person?
in, yes, that when they were checking in, the poll pad glitched and it showed them as already voted even though.
So we're sure that they voted, they were showing in person?
Yes,
Not AV.
correct, yes.
And so to that point, we reviewed their voter history, the audit history in Jarvis. And if they had voted AV, that would have been noted in Jarvis, correct?
Right, okay,
Well,
they would have done
Well,
that.
we're only as good as the data that's available to
Yeah,
us.
well, it shows that she already voted, so that's why I
Right.
said maybe. Okay.
But I mean, I know we're gonna get to the situation with the one voter that intentionally went from one location to another. Perhaps, it's a matter of pulling that audit history that you were able to pull for that particular situation that we previously discussed, and I know we'll get to that. But that audit history, providing that to, the board may allay any concerns, to the extent anyone has any concerns. I don't, but does anyone have any concerns moving forward and approving this? Or in need of additional information prior to moving forward with the vote?
Move we approve these two votes.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the final two provisional ballots as presented by Director Fall. All of those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? The motion passes. Thank you. All right. Up next, absentee by mail ballots.
So these, we have a few different flavors for you guys to look at.
And to that end, we will be taking those up and voting on them individually as well.
Yes, yeah, there's a few that are coupled,
Mhm.
and then one that's moving, but we'll start off individually. So, let me get a video pulled up. Share my screen. Okay, so the first one that we're gonna look at was, found the morning of October 14th, which was a Monday.
It was.
Yes, so, this was found on the floor of the rotunda. So when we reviewed the security footage, which I'll show you all in a moment, we found that if someone had slipped this through the doors of the rotunda on Sunday. And so we had it separated for you guys to review. And then I also included an email in y'all's packet. It should be the next stapled piece of paper in your packet. The voter called and reached out and let me know that she had done this. And I told her that it's become a provisional ballot because it wasn't received during the office hours. So if she could provide a statement to the board and a copy of her ID, then we could review the security footage and then the board would ultimately vote on whether or not to accept that ballot. So you can see she provided her name. She wrote Sunday the 20th. We received this on Sunday the 13th, so she wrote the date wrong, but it is the same voter when we look at her driver's license and how the number address she provided in her email matches the name and the address that's on the ballot. So that is confirmed. And so you can see she told me she's a truck driver and so she's gone all the time. And so that was the only time she could come by. So let me share my screen here so we can cast.
And what you'll be sharing with us now is video footage of
Her dropping the ballot off.
Okay.
So we'll start with this is her placing the ballot through the door. So she tried to open the door. And it's timestamped. You can't see it in the way this media player is playing, but on your flash drive, you can see the timestamp version.
Okay.
So she dropped it through and then you can see she also provided her vehicle description in her email. And so I wanted to show you that video. Share my screen. This is a lot. So you can see, she said it was a white Nissan Murano and she did provide her tag numbers. So you can see her get out of what is a white Nissan Murano and drop that off. So she walks over and then she walks back in her car.
Okay.
I think that's enough proof that she is who she is.
I would tend to think so, but
We need any more.
okay.
I mean, do you all?
It's very clear.
Kind of clear.
All right.
That was good technical work there.
It's been a lot of Blue's Clues around here lately. So.
Following the deployment of Blue's Clues, is there a motion to approve this absentee ballot?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve this avian ballot, this voter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion passes.
So the next is going to be a set of ballots that were dropped off on 11/3. So this was after we closed at 8 p.m. and before midnight because that's when the staff left. That was poll pad Saturday. So they were here till about midnight finishing the poll pads. And so during the time, I'll flip a video, what we had.
11/3.
Yes, they came through 11/2, but we received them the morning of 11/3. And so looking at the names and the addresses are different, but it does appear to be two people that were together. So I'm gonna share that video and this is all we have. They haven't reached out and provided any subsequent information.
And while you're pulling that up, essentially two individuals pushed the ballots through on the night of 11/2.
Yes.
We obviously came in that following Sunday morning, hence the reason why they're noted as 11/3, received on 11.
And that's what they're time stamped as well.
Oh, got it.
So the first individual tries the door, which we're not open at 11:30 at night.
But our mics were on. They have given the impression that we were.
Yes. We're furiously working on ads. So they come back and then one at a time, they place their ballots through the door.
Good on them for each coming back as opposed to one person bringing them back since they're not in the same household.
See how that's what.
Yeah, just let them.
Makeshift Dropbox. I always into some weather stripping in the front door.
No weather stripping the front door. I mean, these are situations where these are the options that they have.
So the first is a gentleman. You can see he approaches the door.
Having a conversation. You see. He made sure his got in.
That's not a weather.
Interesting, the links that people go to deliver their ballots.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the second one. And you said that we've not had communication with them. Okay. Does anyone else, do you have questions?
I have a question for Daniel. What are the rules regarding ballot drop off after the early voting is closed? Where it's it, I thought that they were required to hand the ballot to a deputy registrar. And this is equivalent of a drop box, using the lobby as a drop box, but the drop boxes were already closed.
Right, so this is what we call in the law, a gray area. Actually, it doesn't exactly address this. You definitely, we just had a whole court case about how you can bring ballots to the office, hand delivery. Court affirmed, 2 different courts affirmed that you can hand deliver ballots to the office. But the typical process is that they are received and timestamped by a clerk so they can be documented. The only reason these would be considered that you could do it is that you have evidence that they're delivered, and then unless we confirm that nobody touched them until the clerk picked them up and then signed them in, I guess maybe you could consider that, but that's not you are supposed to walk them in and hand them, deliver them to somebody. If somebody just dropped it and we didn't have any evidence of who it was, I would say you could not approve that, but if they just lay it on the floor and we have, but yes, it's not, they didn't do it this was them attempting to hand deliver to the office, which is allowed. It's just, the code section doesn't say you have to hand it to a clerk. It just says you have to hand deliver them to the office. It says they should be checked in by a clerk, or it says that the clerk should do once they get it, but so this is, honestly, you probably could justify either vote to approve or deny.
The code provision, if you'll share with us the code provision.
So it's 3 and
3.
I think 35 or
3 to
36.
4. Okay.
Also, we just approved the other one for the same reasons.
I think that was during the AIP.
Yes.
That's the difference.
It was actually the Sunday prior to AIP starting.
Okay, so in the first one, the Dropbox was still an okay way to deliver, and this would be after the Dropbox.
I'm closed.
But I don't think we should really think of it as a Dropbox, because
Right.
it's really a hand delivery
Right.
situation. It's
What
not-
time was that on deliveries?
It was between 8 p.m. and 12
Yeah,
midnight.
it looked like it was in the last 30 minutes. I believe it was between 11:15 and 11:45.
On November the 2nd.
So the expectation of anyone being here wouldn't be highly likely for the average person.
Right, but it appears based upon the rule that hand delivery is one thing, hand delivery, i.e. that I'm giving it to you, hand delivery to the office versus handing it to a clerk. Am I correct, Mr. White?
Well, it's confusing because this is again, there's multiple ways to deliver. So such envelope shall then be securely sealed and the elector shall personally mail or personally deliver same to the Board of Registrars or absentee ballot clerk. So this is the Board of Registrars office, which is where the Board of Registrars is deemed to reside, whatever. So there's like two things you can deliver to the board. Like you guys are just hanging out here as the Board of Elections and Registration. So, they could deliver it to the Board of Registrar or to an absentee clerk.
It doesn't say during office hours.
It does not.
No, but yeah,
Just says, such envelope shall be securely sealed and the elector shall then personally mail or personally deliver same to the Board of Registrars or absentee ballot clerk. So it's not, there's not a, doesn't say a person has to receive that, just has to be personally delivered. So what we witnessed on the tape.
well, I guess the only, I'm just,
You're gonna play devil's advocate.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because
That's the floors.
we don't know for sure that these are these two individuals' ballots that we haven't made contact. So you know what I mean? You got a list of people that can deliver it and presumably it's them or one of their.
But you wouldn't know that based upon the mail either.
Did we try to reach out to
We're
them?
bringing it to the Dropbox.
We did not.
Return it.
So I'm just saying like, it's the same, but that, as they're pointing out, it's the same for mail, that's the same for, Dropbox.
Yeah, it's the same for Dropbox.
So we do have,
It cites mail and delivery in the same.
Right.
I'm trying to not equate it to the Dropbox per se, but just to say personally deliver mail, because we don't do any verification with mail. So I don't think I'm doing any verification with personal delivery. I move to accept these two ballots for processing.
Thank you for that, motion, Ms. Mosbacher. Is there a second?
So
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting, these two absentee ballots?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? I'm getting there. Any abstentions? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's do a voice vote because I didn't hear.
I
didn't hear it.
oh, okay.
Okay.
It's laying
Yeah. So it appears to be unanimous to accept. Okay, thank you.
The next two are ballots that were dropped in the tax commissioner's drop boxes. So one was dropped on October 25th and one on October 29th. The October 25th one was dropped in the East Cobb Government Center. And then the October 29th one was dropped at the actual tax commissioner's office drop box. And we know that there's been confusion with the old location being at Lockerbie placed large signs there saying you cannot return ballots here. This is no longer the elections office with our address. But these are two that were received in two different tax commissioner's drop boxes.
Okay. But you said one is at East Cobb.
Yes, the one that was received on October 25th was dropped in the commissioner's drop box at East Cobb Government Center. And then the 29th was dropped in the main office tax commissioner's drop box.
Right, and obviously the one that's at the main office is the previous location.
And that's where we have signs that say, this is no longer the elections office, ballots not accepted here, with our new address on there.
With our new address. Okay.
Those are those two.
We've had this happen many times over the years and we've always processed them, just to say that since the big drop boxes, back in Janine days, we've communicated these.
We had a lot of it, I mean, they finally taped up the.
It's been a problem, right?
Right. However, to your point, Ms. Mosbacher, it's been our practice to accept these.
It has been, yes.
Is there, does anyone have any further questions for Director Paul? Okay, is there a motion?
move we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
I move and, it's been moved and hopefully seconded to accept these two absentee ballots. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next up.
Just want to double check mine. So, these are what we would normally call a naked ballot, where it comes back just in the absentee secrecy envelope. Anytime it's just a ballot in here, we obviously don't count it because we can't confirm who it's from. However, these 9 are ones where we believe that the oath envelope is inside. You can see it, and it's a lot thicker than normal. And so we are requesting the board's permission to open these envelopes and see if the interior oath envelopes are filled out, and then they would be processed and either accepted or rejected based on the content of the oath envelope, but we just need permission. This was one that was mailed in an envelope where the oath envelope is in there just with their ballot, and so we just want to make sure that the board is okay for us to process these. Either accept them or reject them based on the content of the oath envelopes.
Okay, it's total of 9.
Yes.
Were these dropped off or were they?
Let's see, East Dropbox 1029, East Dropbox 1028, East Dropbox 1028, Main Dropbox 1018, South Cobb Dropbox 1020, Main Dropbox 1021, 11/4/24. This was just in another envelope that was mailed to us like this. This also was mailed on 11/4, just like this in another envelope. And then this has been marked as received October 30th. And this is the one that contains both the ballot and an envelope inside. Okay. So some Dropbox.
Have we dealt with this in the past?
I believe so. Yeah.
What's been done in past years?
We have always opened and adjudicated these.
So the vote would just be, or the motion would be to open them such that they can be adjudicated per our normal process. Is there a motion?
I would like to make sure that when those are open, that it's documented. I mean, if there isn't a yellow envelope in there, then they be just.
Oh, of course.
Of course, that's why I'm saying
Just making sure that,
Or if the oath envelope is.
is incomplete.
not incorrect.
That's why I said it's.
So would they be able to cure that?
Today's the cure deadlines.
Okay, all right.
Hence the reason the motion would include that the approval would be to open them and adjudicate per our standard
Just
process.
had questions before the vote. So,
I was just clarifying the motion to the extent that anybody wanted to take advantage of it and say so moved. But
So moved.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the opening of those 9 naked envelopes and adjudicate the contents consistent with our standard process. All those are in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Is that it on absentee ballots?
Yes.
For absentee ballot? Okay. Unless there is anything further from the board, we'll move on to our election update.
Okay, so I just have a few slides here, just so I make sure that I remember everything. So before we dive into looking at paperwork, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page about what's going on, what's completed, what's still left to go. So just prior to this meeting, actually, we completed the top 2 items. So we had already finished the election day counting of the ballots and the election day write-in tally. So those write-ins are being added to the results right now in the computer room. And then 2:30, we finished the AIP write-in tally. So they got through all 300,000 ballots and tallied those write-ins for the certified write-ins. So that's been completed. We also just completed the canvas. I have the canvas worksheets here for us, a copy of them for us to review. We're still can be accepting provisional ballot cures until 5 p.m. And then, of course, you have HAVA ballots as well until 5 p.m. So those are kind of the last 2 outstanding things.
I apologize for interrupting. I just want to understand the distinction between the italicized and the items at the bottom. So are the items at the top, I don't believe those are finished.
No,
It's
these
just the first 2.
Those, I just italicized what's today and then what's after today.
Okay,
But we
understood.
just happened to complete the first 2 after.
No worries. That's why I was trying to draw that distinction.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So that's everything we'll get done today. So 5 p.m. is both the deadlines for those last 2 items. So those will be completed today. And then starting tomorrow, we will do all of the duplication and scanning of the remaining affected absentee by mail ballots. Up until yesterday, we received approximately 370, I think it was 373 or 374, but I don't remember exactly. And then we received another 44 that were postmarked on or before 11/5. I saw one come back from Hawaii on time, so that was really exciting.
Okay, and just for the purposes of everyone that might be joining us virtually, perhaps a description as to what we are referring to as it relates to effective.
Sure, so we were behind on processing applications, and so we were late on issuing approximately 3,400 ballots. These were ballots that were applied for, almost all of them in the last 3 days of the application window. And so those are the ones we refer to as the affected ballots. There was a lawsuit, and then there was a court order that told us that we could kind of follow the UOCAVA guidelines, where as long as they were postmarked 11/5, we could receive them up until 5 p.m. today and count them. Then that was walked back by the Supreme Court, now it's been unwalked back, so now we can count those ballots. So as they're coming in, we're checking the tracking numbers on all of them, to make sure that that initial scan, the received scan, that it's on or before 11/5. So that's what we're using, for the postmark for all of them, for both USPS and UPS. We have had some come back that are 11/6, and so obviously those are not being counted.
Okay. And you're logging all of those,
Yes.
noting the date that they were quote postmarked based upon the scan.
Yes.
Such that we will have a complete log of everything that was returned, obviously noting those that we can count because they were postmarked by that November the 5th, 7 p.m. and those that were not.
Right.
Okay.
So what was the second number you gave? You gave the 374 that we've
I
already.
think it's 373 or 374, and then we received another 44 prior to me stepping into this meeting
Today.
that were postmarked on or before 11/5, so they can be counted.
Was it true?
Whatever 373 or 374 plus 44 is.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Are there additional ballots received that are not
Yes.
in the affected class? Do you have that number?
I don't, I've only logged the ones that were received. I had a few yesterday that were received untimely. I've only logged the ones that were affected ballots, and I have a stack of what to log after this meeting that are non-affected ballots that were received late. And then the ones that were affected ballots that were also received late.
It would seem as though the affected ballots, though, are the ones to focus on so that we can get, so that they can be counted. Okay, but you will, to Ms. Mosbacher's point, log everything
Yes.
so we can do our diligence. Okay.
My main concern on that is that there's a double check and some sort of reconciliation, especially because we've had so many issues within that department and with these particular ballots. And I'm not confident I want to make sure that we are looking that up and that there is some tracking record of that reconciliation process.
So the first pass is done by the ADM supervisor, and then I do the second pass.
Okay,
So I'm checking every single envelope that he is checking.
okay, cool.
So he does the first pass, and then I go back, and when I'm logging them, that's actually a completely separate pass from his. I'm doing it on my own. I'm not watching him do it, completely separate. And that's how we reconcile what was affected and what wasn't.
Okay, and when you say a pass, it's basically the receipt of a ballot. We obviously have our list of affected voters that we've been dealing with, the 3,419. Your ADM supervisor confirms whether that voter that submitted that ballot is on that list or not. And then you subsequently do a second check
Yes, he checks if they're on the list, then he checks the tracking,
to track it.
and then he says yea or nay.
Mhm,
And then I go back behind and I check all those envelopes again,
mhm,
and I say affected voter, yes or no,
mhm.
received on the correct timeline, yes or no.
Okay,
And then those are counted or they're rejected.
okay, and you're doing a full check whether he lands on yea or nay.
Right, okay, yes.
Are we
Especially-
sending notification to those that were rejected?
They will get, we notify all rejected ballots, I believe, but I'll double check.
Is that something we should, but
Yeah.
that's not something that is real time, correct? Okay. I think it's something that's going to happen after we,
I just want to make sure we're notifying.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
The hassle that they had to go through to cast the vote.
Right. I just, again, for the benefit of anyone that was watching, I wanted to draw that line of distinction between whether we're providing them real time or maybe, and they're sitting in, waiting on it. And again, we didn't give them something they needed or
I
they're
think
looking
they're
for.
anxious to know whether it was counted or not. I don't know if we're still way behind on crediting the
No, we're not.
voters.
We're completely caught up. We were caught up
But
last.
is the MVP caught up?
Yes,
Right.
yes. So it will show an.
Our record will match the MVP?
Yes, it'll show an MVP whether it's accepted or rejected prior to them receiving a rejected letter, but they will receive it.
Right, and I want to manage I want to manage expectations with respect to when we will send that rejection letter out to the extent that anyone is if there very well may be an affected voter that is viewing this, and I just want to manage expectations when we may send that out such that if they're looking for it.
That'll be next week.
Okay, that's where I was going, Ms. Fisher.
So if they look at those that we've already rejected, it will show
Yes.
rejected.
Yes, the ones that we've already received that were postmarked 11/6, we have received some. We've already gone in and rejected on Jarvis.
Okay,
Yes.
that's part of the verification.
Yes, yes,
Okay, which is a standard process.
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments around this particular item? Continue.
So then we will enter all the final write-in tallies for the certified write-ins. So we'll enter those into the same reporting system that we upload all of our results in. So we have to manually key those in. So the team is working on that today and we'll have that done by certification on Tuesday. So we can see, when we look at the election summary, all of the certified write-ins are zeros. So you'll see some numbers there when you see this report again on Tuesday. And then of course, we'll be uploading the final results from provisionals, those last affected ballots that can be counted. And then the write-in tallies will be entered. And so that'll bring us to our final numbers, which is what you'll see on Tuesday.
Will we get the vote count for each of those write-ins?
Yes, absolutely. It'll be just like this where it's showing. So
Okay.
right now, when you're looking at the election summary report, you can see how many write-ins were cast in that race by the different methods, but we don't have who they wrote them in for. So obviously not all of them wrote in a certified write-in. Some of them wrote in Kirby Smart, which we saw a lot, but so you'll see those numbers broken up just like how it is listed here. Just like that, yeah. So that is what we'll be doing over the weekend heading into Tuesday.
I've gotten a couple questions from people who did write in. Somebody or the other seats they voted for on that ballot, have they already been
Yes.
counted? So
Yes.
it's just the write-in from their ballot that hasn't been shown yet.
Yep,
But
that's
their
exactly
other votes for the other seats are already in the counts. Absolutely, thank you.
Yes. Good question.
Any additional questions with respect to equal outstanding activities as presented?
Okay, so with that, now that we've talked through what we still have to do, I thought we could head into the election materials review, which is the purpose of the 3 p.m. meeting. So I wanted to, when I reviewed the rule, and I know we talked about it at our last meeting, and I talked through kind of what the rule requires. The main meat of the rule is to compare the total number of ballots cast by method by precinct with the total number of unique voter IDs on the numbered voter list. So when we had the meeting last month, I shared that the only numbers we would have today at this time would be early voting and election day, because we still have ABM ballots that are being counted and we still have obviously provisional ballots. So that's all we're gonna review now, because that's all I have.
You call.
Yes, the UCOB, so that'll be part of that ABM number. So, and we had them coming in this morning, so we're still definitely getting UCOBs. So these are the numbers as they stand right now. So you can see we have 3 different methods of looking at the numbers. We have the ballots cast, that's the scanner, right? Those are the numbers you see on your election summary report. We have the numbered list from ePulse, which is the poll pad check-in system. Knowing is the vendor for that. So that's our main database there. And then there's the numbered list for Jarvis. And you can obviously see that none of those numbers are the same. So I know I had tried to keep the board informed pretty early on in early voting when we noticed that there was an issue with ePulse. I know I sent an email I believe that second week, early voting. I know that Steve knows firsthand because he worked early voting, so he saw it. What we kind of called the red cloud, where the poll pads, well, you know you're syncing because you have a green cloud. And then when you have a red cloud, you're not syncing. You're syncing really slowly. So you're supposed to sync every 3 minutes, and that is not what we were seeing. So we had initially reported this to Knowing that we were seeing it across all of our sites, even sites that have the cradle points, which are supposed to allow us to have better connectivity to cellular, to have more green clouds. They said that it wasn't an issue, that they were still receiving the data on their end, that it was just taking longer than normal. And then we started seeing some really weird things. We started seeing people who would check in, and then before they handed their driver's license back, the poll worker was diligent enough to scan it again just to make sure that they did their job and they checked them in correctly. We have a voter certificate for them. We have an encoded card. They scan their ID. They're not showing us checked in at all. So that was the first red flag that we had. Reported it to Knowing right away.
And I apologize for interrupting you. That was during the AIP election day vote.
We know for sure we saw it during AIP.
Okay.
Still getting back reports from election days, whether this was as large of an issue. We didn't get a lot of reports of that, but we also haven't had time to go back and really look at the number list.
Sure.
We also have a lot of supplemental voters on election day, so I don't have the election day supplemental numbers here. Like you can see, there were 215 supplemental voters that would be added to that number in e-polls. I don't have the supplemental totals for election day because they're all over the place. So it's gonna take us through the weekend to compile all of those.
And just to be certain for everyone's comfort and understanding, just describe or explain what a supplemental voter is.
So a supplemental voter is someone who should be on the poll pad, but they're not. So it could be that their registration was keyed timely. We saw a lot. There was one particular, the main issue we saw on election day with e-polls was that there was one particular day, I think it was the voter registration deadline, I think it was 10/7, that if they made an update in MVP that day, timely, for the registration deadline, we keyed it timely, it was not showing up in the poll pad.
And when you say they, you're talking about the voter accessed their My Voter page and made an update timely, given the October 7th deadline to register. And so the voter made that timely update. We received that information. We feed it as we are required to do so. However, they still were not on the voter list.
Yes, so because we were able to confirm their registration in the voter registration system, we would allow them to vote on the BMDs. They would get a manual activation. They would manually sign a voter certificate, and then their name would be added to the supplemental list.
That's the 250.
So that's for AIP. So we have the same thing for election day, but I don't have how many supplemental voters we have for election day because it's a little all over the place. So we just finished the canvas right before this meeting started, so we haven't had a chance to compile all those numbers.
That'll be, sorry to interrupt you, but that'll be something that we will have on Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do we know why Jarvis shows 252 thereabouts more voters check-ins than e-poll shows?
You're talking about AIP?
Advanced voting?
Okay.
Jarvis, the list
Yes.
I requested, which, right here is why I requested that.
I understand. I just wanted to clarify it.
Yeah, and we'll look at it. So all the files that support these numbers are all on your flash drives that I put on your place.
But we don't know why it's different.
So we have an idea. So there were kind of two things we saw during AIP. We saw voters who would have credit in e-polls. They would show a check-in in e-polls, but they weren't showing check-in on the poll pad and they weren't showing credit in Jarvis. But we did see their check-in in e-polls.
And we had a voter certificate that they signed to show their check.
Yeah, and so the basis of what we have for everyone who voted is a voter certificate.
Right.
And then some people showed up in e-polls. Then there were voters who we have a voter certificate for, so we know they voted. They're not in e-polls, they're not showing check-in on the poll pad, and they don't have credit in Jarvis.
Right, and to be certain, again, just for everyone's edification, you can't have a voter oath without having gone through the process of checking in. So like, is illogical as to why someone wouldn't be shown as checked in via e-polls, because a check-in via e-polls is necessary for the printing of the voter oath.
Even if they wanted to cancel their check-in, if they wanted to leave and come back later, which happens, they want to do more research or whatever it is. They would show their check-in and then they would have another line showing cancel check. And so even in those instances where we might have a voter certificate for someone who canceled their check-in, we would still show that audit trail in e-polls.
And this was pervasive during the entire 3 weeks.
It really started in the middle of the second week.
Okay.
Through the end, and we never saw relief. So I very quickly engaged Knowing and the Secretary of State's office. It took us a while to get at the level of responsiveness we needed from Knowing. And then over the past few days, just prior to Election Day, they were able to identify, I believe it was approximately 630 voters who were not showing checked in and did not have credit in Jarvis, but should have. So they were able to give us that list so we could assign credit to them. But then that still left approximately 117-ish that we don't have credit for, we don't have a check-in for. So unless Knowing can continue to find those voters, we're gonna have to manually go through 293,000 voter certificates and adjudicate every single voter on Jarvis to a birth certificate. And I spoke with Director Evans this morning with Secretary of State's office. And our AIP team this has been really hard. I mean, they're saying, well, send us the list of affected voters and we'll fix it. We don't know who they are. If we know who they are, we can just give them credit, right? And so the AIP team has worked so hard on trying to adjudicate these numbers, and I have some information that might kind of help. But when I was speaking with Director Evans this morning, he said that the team was able to identify 5 more that weren't on Knowing's list that should have credit. And he took it to Knowing and was like, they found these, you need to find the rest, make it right. So I know that they're also, I would say, not satisfied with the level of service from Knowing at this point.
So you're saying that Knowing was able to identify 630 some odd voters that were not on the number list as we were able to pull that report, right? Okay, and have you at this point gone in and assigned those voters credit, or that is the plan?
Those, I believe most of them have been given credit at this point, they should have been.
From us having to manually go in and give them credit.
They were able to assign credit,
Who is they?
Knowing.
So Knowing identified the 630. They then went in and assigned credit.
Yes.
Do we know how Knowing assigned credit?
Through Jarvis.
So Knowing the Secretary of State provided Knowing with access to assign credit,
I think.
to your knowledge.
I think it's the same, I think that they use the same system that they use when we're checking in. So the check-in is what talks to Jarvis to give the credit. And so I think that they were able to identify those check-ins, and then those would then be able to become accredited Jarvis, whereas before there was no check-in.
But they were no longer hooked up and syncing, so they would have to manually go in there and adjust that.
Through the e-poll.
Okay, and then we had 5 additional,
Yes, that our AIP assistant supervisor was able to identify.
the Secretary of State, I don't know who,
We did.
you all identified them. So then that takes that 117-ish down to 112-ish.
Yeah, I have kind of a list here that has the 3 numbers. So we have the 293, 296, listen to me, numbers are hard. 293,296 is what we're showing in e-polls. And then the 215 supplementals, the 293,456 in Jarvis, and then 293,623 cast ballots. So the Jarvis number list at 293,456, we've identified 44 voters that were checked in, but they have no credit in Jarvis. And then we identified another 7 that were part of that 630 that were supposed to have gone to credit that still need credit. We have 3 that are vote safe, so they're not gonna add it to the numbers because they're not put on the list. We have 1 that was AB credit. It was given ABM credit by the system instead of AIP credit, so it was improperly assigned credit that we have to fix. And then the 5 that Ms. Funfeld was able to identify was from Booth Ward on 11-1. 5 voters checked in and they had no credited drivers just from that list on that one day. So that would bring us to 293,516, which gets us closer to the number of cast ballots, but we're still missing those voters. And then looking at the cast ballots to the numbered list, so 293,623 minus the 293,516, which is the numbered list that once we do all that adjudication. And then we have, we know that there were 12 abandoned ballots. And then there were 2 ballots that were scanned twice. It was 2 different days. There were paper jams and the numbers didn't change on the scanner and it was rejected and it didn't show vote cast. So the poll workers had them place the scan, go back through the scanner. And then at the end of those 2 days, when they looked at the numbers, they did have 1 higher on the scanner than on the check-ins.
Can we get a copy of what you're reading off of?
Yes,
Thank you.
I believe.
I'll tell you, the more.
I was just gonna say Ms. Effort was trying to raise her hand to ask a question.
This is seems like a statewide technology issue, not a sub-specific issue.
Correct.
So, I haven't heard, and maybe I've just been out of the loop, other counties reporting the problem. Do you think Cobb is like the first to identify it or other counties reporting it too? Like what's going on statewide if you've heard anything?
I spoke with, we had our weekly meeting this morning with Region 3 for Gabrielle and with Director Evans. And in the end, our net is between, 95 to 100 voters that we don't know who need to take credit for. I know Gwinnett had about 54, so they had some as well. The director for DeKalb and Fulton weren't on the call, but there was someone from DeKalb's office that said they had similar issues, but he didn't have a number. So it's not just a Cobb issue. And when we look at, relatively 100 voters to how many voters we saw in AIP, it's a smaller percentage, obviously. It's like a fraction of a percentage of voters who should have credit and drivers that don't. The 293,000.
The more concerning as I'm looking at this is almost 400 ballots were cast different than ePulse is saying we checked in.
Well, when you add in the supplemental,
They
That
would
makes
not
sense.
have been checked in.
yes, they're supplemental, they're not checked in, but they vote a regular ballot.
They do.
Yes. Because they sign a paper oath as opposed to going through the check-in process and then the receipt type oath being provided. So it's the 293,
So
296 plus
we're still quite a
215.
few ballots.
And then 106.
So I think that that's
Quite a
that
few
net that we have left between what they've been able to adjudicate and what we still know are missing.
Right.
So we know we've adjudicated the number of receipts, the number of voter oaths to the number of ballots cast. So that's why we're really hopeful that in a week and find those remaining 100, whatever, 400, whatever it is. Because otherwise, like I said, we'll have to go through all 293,000 voter oaths and adjudicate them.
Okay. And so does anyone else have any further questions? I don't want to. Yes, Mr. Bruni.
I have a question. You all did the manual scanning of the ballots the last couple of days,
Only for election day.
only for election.
Right.
That shows that.
Yeah, if we did it for AIP, it'd probably take us 3 to 4 weeks to do that.
So how did those numbers compare to these numbers for election?
I believe we were spot on. No one brought any changes to my attention. And they finished right before, so I haven't been able to check in with them fully in a year, but no one brought any concerns to my attention.
Just to the extent that Mr. Bruni has raised that question, perhaps, if you will, maybe we can confirm that so that everyone here at the table has that comfort. I don't know whether you can send an email or a text message to the team. That would be great. Ms. Fisher, did you have another question? I thought you did, but
Many.
I know you have many questions, but just as it relates to
I
the
have
copy.
many questions that probably can't be answered here.
Okay, understood. Just want to be certain that we're all having an opportunity to raise questions in this forum that we believe can be answered.
That can be answered.
Okay.
And Tig, I think what might be helpful, this is great, it's good visual, but just to have some of the differentials shown on that chart, because I think that will inform the discussion too.
Yeah,
So
I can do
when
that.
we're looking at that, when we're looking at it final.
And-
You know, we have a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I was
I'll
trying
make sure
to,
you guys get a copy of this.
that would be helpful. I was trying to jot down the numbers as well. So as it relates to a to-do, between now and Tuesday, the to-do, as I believe I've heard you describe, rest in the lap of knowing.
Yes, that's my understanding. Based on the conversation I had with Director Evans this morning,
Mm-hmm.
that is where the stick lies at the moment.
Okay, and do we have a timing? Because obviously we are in a position where this board will reconvene on Tuesday at 3 p.m. And we're tasked with certifying the existence of these numbers.
I've stressed that importance to the NOAA representative I work with, and
David, I believe his name is.
we'll continue to follow up with him and stress that.
Has Mr. Evans, to your knowledge, stressed that?
Yes,
Do we have a time frame or a date certain or a time certain that's been communicated to him? Okay, perhaps that's the next step.
Or maybe that comes from the board.
And that's why I was referring to the next step that this board takes, with regard to putting a time certain by which that information needs to be provided to you, whether they can provide it or not, because that then, I believe, the backstop is a manual review of 296,000 some odd voter oaths, correct? And obviously that is going to take time.
And
But
it cannot be done by certification.
I understand.
If we are printing those certificates in the poll pads, which we did in all locations, correct?
Yes, we do. And they're batched in batches of 50 per location.
That should certainly match the count on e-polls. Because that's where it comes from when they,
Right, I don't know that it's a question of it not matching. I believe it was a matter of assigning credit, but please correct me.
It's kind of both. So we have some where they do match,
Mhm.
and then some where the only proof we have they voted is their voter certificate.
But then that would presuppose that the e-pulse numbers are correct. And we know that e-pulse numbers are not reliable.
Right.
well,
Okay.
neither is Jarvis. So, the voter certificates, when they close down the polls, they were supposed to have a count of those.
They do, and
Now, on the summary sheet, there should be a count of the voter. Have we added those up?
yes, we've adjudicated the number of voter certificates to the number of ballots. Those numbers match.
That happens at the end of each day. But for AIP, that adjudication happens at the end of the day, correct?
Yes.
During AIP on the recap sheet.
And the ballots cast match
The number of voter certificates.
certificate.
Oh, can we get copies of that, the summary sheets on that?
Of all of them?
Well,
Are you talking,
if we can't get the numbers reconciled, maybe.
so it would be what, I believe the 19 days of AIP times the
12
number 12
locations.
locations.
13 locations.
I'm sorry, 13,
There's
because there are
two
2 here, that's correct, so 13 locations.
Yeah, I'll double check to see if that's a line on the absentee recap sheet. If the voter certificates are listed, I can't remember on
I
that.
think they're
That's that third
supposed to
column.
be, they're supposed to match the voter certificates. Aren't they? I mean, we used to, when
Yes.
it was paper.
They are.
Okay,
I do know that counties that don't use the printers, they don't do manual certificates. So
We
I'm not
used
sure
to.
if that's gone away.
on the other side of the desk, poll watching, they would count the certificates every hour on the hour, and they had to match whatever the scan ballot count was. Right? That would be done, they would do an hour. This is in the olden days, pre-Dominion.
My understanding now is they are, when you get to 50, it's not an hourly count, it's based upon the number you receive. So they're batched, the receipts are batched independently.
But that number should match up.
Oh, and of course.
Right.
Of course.
I'll see if those aren't explicitly listed on that absentee recap form, then I can get copies, scans of the AIP summary sheets and get that to y'all. For all the sites for all the days.
I just think if we can't come up with the right reconciliation before we count 200
Understood.
And we could drill down and really look at the days and the sites to try to find those discrepancies on that level, so we can just look at particular days and sites. But I think that it is gonna be pervasive across all days and all sites.
So on the 215 supplemental voters, we have voter registration applications that match up with that list.
Oh, yes, yes, they're all registered voters. Yes, they have to be.
We've
registered.
checked.
Yes,
We've
that's,
checked.
that's
Well,
how
you
they did it.
say they have to be, but it's not in a report. It just came from the Secretary of State, right?
The supplemental list?
Yeah.
We
No.
create the supplemental list based upon that voter comes in, they attempt to check in,
And they're not.
and they're not on the,
system.
so then a phone call is made back to the office, to our registration department. The registration department confirms that
That
voter,
they're in Jarvis.
that they are registered, that is correct. And then my understanding, at that time, that's when they complete the manual oath, not through the poll pad check-in, because obviously they're not there. Then we manually allow them to vote via BMT. Okay.
Going back to the suggestion one of y'all made about sending the letter or communication to the Secretary of State or no link about the date. I don't know if we could partner with any of the other counties and have multiple counties sending it together to make it more impactful, just an idea.
I don't know whether that would require a vote on behalf of that county, and I know some counties have already, because I want to take a vote here, but what I don't believe is prudent for, me or you or our vice chair to kind of go out on their own and draft that. So I think we all should be in agreement with this, and if other counties feel the same way. I know this meeting has taken place in other counties, and one county is in their meeting, as I understand it, theirs started at 3 p.m. as well. Maybe we reach out to them, but there may not be the opportunity for us to.
Some counties are certifying today.
Some of the smaller counties.
Some
Right.
counties. So,
I think it's an amazing, excellent idea, and I think we do that outreach and inquire whether they've done that as that, whether they're willing to do that as well. We just may not be in a position to wait to join with a letter or have them join with us. You were saying, Ms. Fisher?
I think the more information we have about the issue at hand,
I believe so.
considering we've been told through a court order that we're required to certify. No
Yes.
matter what, no matter what.
So it sounds as if
The differentiations here are not being caused by the county. I mean, that's kind of clear to me.
right.
And I'm very grateful for the numbered list from Jarvis,
Yes.
because we don't normally run that, right?
Yes, so you
To
have,
reconcile that with no ink. But we have to wait a week after we certify to even see the no ink list. Thank you for getting that before we certify.
Right.
This is-
So it sounds like the discrepancies, we've identified potential alternative methodologies to reconcile, and we've shared the information that the board members would like to see with Director Fall, such that she knows what to provide to us at next week's meeting. Is
Yeah.
everyone comfortable with that? Okay, and you're comfortable with knowing exactly what the board has requested? Okay.
I did just hear back from, our elections manager. She said that for the count, that there were 3 precincts that were short 1 ballot each. And they double checked the ballot bin and didn't find a stray ballot, so she's going to have a different team recount them on Monday or Tuesday morning to see if it was just a discount on their part. So 3 precincts were short 1 ballot each, but the equipment, there was none in the.
What were those precincts?
She did not say.
But you'll provide them to us next week, as well as the confirmation that either they were able to identify whether the count that took place was correct or a subsequent count, and if it's the same. Okay. Mr. Vernon, you were asking.
My only comment is that the top 2 numbers on the screen, the ballots cast numbers, are based on the voter certificates, and they match the numbers on the summary report.
I know that the AIP numbers are based on the voter certificates and they match, but I don't know if we've been able to confirm the voter certificates for election day. but those are how many ballots were cast. And then you can see the numbered list for e-polls was 10 more, which could easily be accounted for by abandoned ballots. 10 is actually pretty low, I think. And then the numbered list in Jarvis, the credit. We know there was an issue with credit. We got a lot of calls Wednesday morning of people saying that they didn't have credit in Jarvis yet. We had to manually sync every single poll pad when they got back here. So we had to touch every poll pad and do a voter credit download on there. So it's possible that some of them haven't got through yet. It's also possible we're having the same issue that we had with AIP where it's just not communicating with Jarvis and they're just.
But the AIP is the flip side of what election day is. AIP is showing far more, whereas election day shows less. So far more than knowing
For ballots cast.
for a numbered list from Jarvis. You're saying it's a syncing problem.
But remember, we also had 630 that knowing identified that they went in and added manual credit. So it's likely that those 630 voters, only some of them are probably reflected in the e-polls numbered list versus the Jarvis numbered list.
But it sounds
Well,
so we,
they gave credit, the two of them should be matched up.
They
now.
should.
Okay, so that doesn't fly with me, sorry.
But-
Sorry for doubting it, but I mean, if they did it, and they should match.
Yeah, like I said, we've identified at least 5 that were not given credit that should have been.
however, with respect to what the county is responsible for, or what's within our purview and that we can even control. Then to Mr. Bruning's point, upper right-hand corner, 293,617, that matches the number of oaths, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And then the number, the count on the scanners. So we're confident that we've tied those two numbers on the county side.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So you have the scan counts?
for AIP. But we did not run the ballots through the counters for AIP because.
No, I mean.
No, I'm talking about the scanner.
Number on the scanner.
Yes.
That's what I was referring to when I said the
So we
scanner.
get those.
Yes, that's the AIP summary sheets, I believe, yes.
That's AIP and election day. If we can.
So the election day scanner recap forms as well?
So that was the point that I was making with regard to the,
See the actual paper of all of those?
I want to see the
well, it's a
Give me
recap times 150 or
give me a
148.
summary so I can see.
All that data is, but then it just handwritten on those forms.
Huh?
So you want somebody to put that data into something, like you said?
Well, I would hope that we match the number of scans
Yeah, I mean,
to the total number of votes at some point. I would hope we would.
And I believe the audit team does that work, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Wall?
Yes.
So we should have that number then, right? Or no?
What I believe, and if I might, Ms. Mosbacher, I believe that number, that work has been done, the validation, that reconciliation, okay? There are 148 recap forms that show the number on the scanners from
There should be.
the
There
148,
should be a
right?
OPEC scanner, BMV recap sheet.
Exactly, but what I, from times 148, what I believe I heard was that those numbers have not been placed into an Excel spreadsheet. That data entry has not taken place such that we could hand to you or anybody else here that document. So I think it was a confirmation of what it is that we are asking Mrs. Ball to provide to us. So to that point, are we requesting those 5 types of recap sheets times 148? Am I correct?
I would love to have it, but if I can't get it, unless we can reconcile these numbers with a reasonable explanation.
Right, and that's why I inquired, have we already performed that reconciliation as it relates to advanced voting? And I believe we have.
Yes.
And that reconciliation is, right. So then, as it relates again to ballots cast, the information that is within our control, the county's control, I believe if we can perform that reconciliation with respect to election day, making certain that the check-in number matches the scan number. Correct? That's what you're asking for, correct, Ms. Fisher? Okay.
And then,
Because
right,
they
and then the discrepancies would be something, like typically when you work a poll, I mean, if there's a discrepancy, you're writing it on that recap sheet. Should the table go back and imperfect? Right, but I
Yeah.
mean, that's the practice, that's what's
Right.
taught. So we should be able to find those discrepancies, or at least, but ideally, we should be able to account for the differences in those numbers. I don't think going through all
6,000.
right, and there's 7 recap sheets, right?
Oh, I said 5, I meant 7, so
So you're
7 times
seven total.
148.
Really, the two most important, pull that skim. That's the
It's the reason why I mentioned
That is the two most important.
I agree, and I agree with that completely. I just don't think that, I think that asking to get all that paperwork to us would be an onerous task, especially because ultimately what we want is those numbers to tie and an explanation.
Or an explanation,
Right.
because knowing still hasn't found all of them. So,
Right.
Right, but I think to the extent that we can't control Knowing or Jarvis, if we look at the information that is within our possession, that being the recap forms for those two check-ins and scanner count, making certain that those two numbers tie, to Ms. Mosbacher's point, to the extent that they don't tie, looking at that recap form to see if there's an explanation and provide the explanation.
So when we're asked to certify, and we cannot reconcile, but we put our name on there, that we say it's fair, it's honest, it's thorough.
I believe we are certifying the numbers as they are provided. Mr. White,
That the numbers don't,
You're not certifying that everything's perfect. You're certifying that's the numbers you came up with. And then
we're
if somebody thinks-
certifying with the
Let me
numbers
finish.
don't match.
You're you're certifying these are the numbers we have, hang on. And then if someone thinks there's an election contest, they can do that, because it's never been the rule that you have to certify and say, every number on this sheet balances perfectly. There's always people that walk off with balance, there's people that don't get credit in Jarvis. There's never been a county, I mean, maybe there's small counties that can do it, but a large metro county that can say, we got all the numbers right before certification, we know exactly. So yes, you're certifying, you're not certifying that you got everything perfect. That's not what certification means. Certification means these are the numbers we come up with as a board. And then if someone thinks there's a problem with that, there's an entire code section on contesting election results. There's also another code section that talks about the audit that happens afterwards. And those two things are what the board and what people who've been on the ballot or who want to challenge the results, those are the processors for that. The problem, we've got is this expectation that we should be able to get everything, 400,000 votes, more than 400,000 votes, just every number perfect. We want to get as close as we can, but you're not being asked to say every single number we have is perfect. You're just saying this is the number that as best we can come up with. But then it is a mandatory duty in the court's order to go ahead and certify it. Because again, you're not going to go into court, the court's not going to smack you on the hand because you didn't know we messed up and we can't say exactly that everybody's getting perfect credit. You're certifying, saying to the best of your knowledge, this is the numbers we have. And you have to give something for both for the people who might want to contest it, but then also stuff for the auditors to work on afterwards on those other reviews. So that's the process that's set up in code.
and that's what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is nothing new, like this is the way it's always.
Yes, it is, but you.
No, I mean, like the board members certifying, just as you described, that's not.
Yes.
a
We didn't
process.
have a lot of these problems pre-Jarvis, well, maybe that too, but a lot of this was paper counts, hand counts, prior to
There
the
was no
dominion
paper
of
at the dairy
Jarvis. Paper,
There was no paper with the dairy machine.
no, there wasn't. There was a number.
So that's why I keep attempting
There was a
to
number.
pull the conversation back to, I understand that there are concerns with e-pulse numbers and Jarvis numbers and those not tying to our numbers. But again, that's why I continue to pull the conversation back to those numbers that are within, that we can verify those things within our possession, in the
I think
county's
it's
possession.
our duty to try to make those numbers.
Understood, but to the
Okay, and
extent
so I
that,
just
that
wanna make that
e-pulse and
clear.
Jarvis are not within the purview of the county.
I realize that.
Yeah. Okay, so, back to you, Director Fall, you have your marching orders, for lack of a better way of putting it, as far as the information that we'd like to see, such that we can make the best attempt at the numbers and the documentation that we have available to us to try to reconcile any discrepancies.
So if I might recap, just to make sure.
Of
I
course,
understand.
please.
So the AIP summary sheets, or if it's within the AFD recap form, something that shows confirmation that the number of voter certificates match the number on the scanner.
Check-ins to scans.
Great. The final say on those 3 precincts that were 1 ballot short. And then election day, the scanner recap forms, making sure scanners match check-ins, or for lack of check-in, the number of voter certificates that we have.
Right, and any explanation of a discrepancy at the precinct level to the extent that when they did their reconciliation at the end of election day, if that did not match, providing that explanation, correct, Ms. Fisher? Because it should have been included on, a description should have been included on the recap sheet.
My understanding of canvassing, those numbers should already be reconciled during your canvass, correct? When you look,
When you say they should already be reconciled, what do you mean?
when you're going through the summary sheets, and you're going, okay, everything matches. Number of scans, number of check-ins match, check.
Right, and I believe that that's the process you indicated that was ongoing until right before this meeting.
Yes,
So I would hope that we have that written down somewhere, that by 148 precincts, they match.
Right, I just,
Never exactly time.
I'm not gonna lie, Jennifer, I'm not worried about one vote here, one vote there. That's somebody who walks out, that could be a misscan that, well, like the 2
Right.
that we're talking about. That's not my worry. What my worry is, none of these numbers match. None of them. If at least 2 of the 3 matched, I wouldn't be making a big deal of this.
yeah, and please know that I'm not being dismissive of the concern that you're raising, Ms. Fisher. I just am of the mindset, and I may be out on this limb by myself, to the extent that we are not knowing and cannot control equals. We are not the Secretary of State and cannot control Jarvis. What is within our control, what is within, kind of our realm of responsibility is performing a reconciliation to determine whether the number of check-ins, whether it be on election day or advanced voting, it sounds like we've completed this process for advanced voting. We still need to, we've done it to confirm that check-ins on the poll pads, i.e. voter certificates, match what is the number of ballots scanned in each precinct. And ideally, yes, they would absolutely match, but unfortunately, it appears that we are at the mercy of No Ink with respect to equals and the Secretary of State with respect to Jarvis.
We are at their mercy. But I think it's important for us to raise the issue.
Of course, and make an earnest attempt.
Because we've known about Jarvis issues for a very long time. It's still unfixed. We had thousands of voters not getting credit for voting. Then all of a sudden we have them.
If I can make a modification to use the pronoun, they have known about Jarvis issues. They have known that credit has not been assigned because we don't have we being this board, our county, our director
I
does not
didn't
have.
say it was our responsibility.
Oh, no, I was just saying we versus
Just
they,
say not checking into these issues.
but I believe we are checking.
Allows them to continue to.
Yeah, I think we are checking though. I think.
Normally, we wouldn't be looking at this number of Jarvis. We'd only be looking at equals.
But we are.
Thank God and thank you.
I think we're good, and I think we can move on just because I feel like we're just now reviewing, so we know what the next steps are.
Yes.
And then,
And I'd like to highlight, talking about the canvas process, I sent the paperwork audit sheet to y'all earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember, but this is what the canvas does. So they go through every single section of all the paperwork. So the touchscreen recap for the quad, the touchscreen recap for the duplex, the ATI and the single, the touchscreen scanner recap for those duplex ATI and singles, and then the poll pad recap and the ballot recap sheet. So on this, they have to say for every single precinct, do the numbers match? Do the closing numbers match? Yes or no? If no, is an explanation listed? Yes or no? So that's what the canvas does. The canvas can't go and fix those things necessarily unless they can just see they did their math wrong.
Right.
But they identify what was done correctly and what was not done correctly. So that's what we have copies of here for all 148 precincts, and that's what I'll likely use to pull the information together for what's been requested.
So I already have the information, that stack that I'm asking for.
I believe so.
Okay.
Gonna tell you whether or not they match.
And I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay.
Is there anything further with regard to this? I believe you have additional information as part of your materials review.
Yes, I was just going to share, so on your flash drives, you have copies of the videos that we watched today for the earlier provisional voters. You have the election day numbered list, both in PDF and Excel format, that's the knowing list. And then at the bottom of it, there's a voter participation history spreadsheet, that's from Jarvis. And so there's different tabs on that spreadsheet where it has everything together, and then I've broken it out by tab for ADN, AIP, election day, and election day provisional. There's already people that have provisional credit in there for those. And when I pulled the report at 10 a.m. this morning, had already been assigned credit because they were out of precinct, so we're able to count those. So that's why that's not our full provisional participation, just when I pulled it this morning is where we were at. I also have copies of the election summary, which I provided another printout, it's the same as it was on election morning after election.
Okay.
And then I also provided the statement of votes cast. The reason I didn't print it is because it was 1,095 pages. And so that will allow you to go in precinct by precinct, and first see the different methods of voting, so you can see the turnout by method, and then you can see the actual results by race, by precinct. So that's listed, and then you'll get another copy, of course, on Tuesday of the final numbers. And then there's also the Jarvis numbered list for AIP that we've been working off of. And so you have, there's not a knowing or an equals AIP numbered list in here because we're using it at all. So we're kind of trying to go off of the birth certificates, what's in Jarvis, and making sure that those numbers get as close as we can.
Okay, and just to be certain, with respect to the statement of voters, votes cast, that obviously that number is going to change, that report is going to change because we are a few, like 30 minutes away from the deadline to receive provisional as well as absentee ballots and of those from affected voters as well as any cures.
Right, so there's no provisional votes in there at all right now,
Right.
nor are there any write-ins. So when you see that same report on Tuesday, you'll have the rest of the APM that were affected that come in, any UOCAVAs that come in, the provisionals and the write-ins. And then on your flash drives, you also have the UOCAVA applications report that was requested. And so on that one, I do have it broken out by tab. I have all of them. No, I didn't do tab on this one, but you can sort by the 4 different types, MOS, MST, OSP, and OST. And so those are all on the flash drive.
Thank you.
So those are just the applications that we received for this election, but it goes back to the end of last year because they can apply on an annual basis. So you'll see their application status and their absentee status as well. And when there was a ballot request issued and received. And then there's also a column that shows you who received an electronic ballot and then who received a physical ballot.
Yeah, the reason I asked for that is because on the Secretary of State's report, they, as you well know, changes daily. Voters disappear, they come back, Lazarus effect. It appears to me, the way I have just assumed is the best way for me to identify overseas, permanent, temporary, and never a resident is by the ballot they receive, which is only the districts for federal elections. Whereas the military gets the whole enchilada. Today's report is totally different than it was last week when on those districts. So
And that's the report
well,
pulled from Jarvis?
no, it's, well, wherever he pulls it from.
Okay.
I have an idea where that is, based on the inconsistencies. But, yes, it's today's, well, I wrote down.
The only ones who would be federal only are OSPs, overseas permanents. OSTs, MOS, and MST all get their full ballot. It's only OSPs that get.
Okay.
I feel like we're getting,
Overseas permanent.
we're getting super granular right now. I feel like we've gone out.
I do have one more thing I need to mention. That's required for the certification.
Sure. We, how we got here was we were reviewing the information that you, and thank you for providing it, the information that's on the flash drives. Anything else that you need to give as far as context for the information that's on the flash drive?
I think that that's it for the flash drive. The last thing I have on my list of things we're supposed to review for this meeting, all that information that's on the flash drive, the number lists are all sorted by precinct, which is what the rule requires. I also made sure they all had sort, all the headers have sorts, so you can sort them however your brain works, and then examine for duplicates. So on that, you're not gonna find duplicates on the Jarvis numbered list because it's just voters with credit. It's not multiple credit lines, and so that's not how Jarvis works. When examining for duplicates on the e-polls report, we did identify, right now it's 3 voters who have 2 check-ins. So we'll walk through each one. One is an individual who, it was just, she showed up, they checked her in, they did the recheck of the scanner of the ID. It wasn't showing that she was checked in, so they checked her in again just to make sure she got credit. Well, then it came through as 2 check-ins. So we know by the Times or by the poll workers account and AIP that was a simple explanation. Then we have an individual who voted first on AIP on 10/25 at, I believe it was West Cobb Regional Library. And then she came back on 10/30 at North Cobb Senior Center, checked in, was able to check in because she wasn't showing us having voted, because there's a problem with showing that. And then when she was given her voter card to go vote on the VMD, she informed the poll worker she had already voted and that she should have been able to check in. So she did not cast a second ballot, but she did check in twice. And so no one is obviously aware of this. This is the whole reason why we raised the concern of them not showing check-ins is because of this. And then finally, there was a gentleman who on 10/28, I believe, 10/28, he voted in the main office here. He checked in at 12:28 on the 28th. I might be mixing up my 28th, but he checked in at
28, based on the previous conversation.
He checked in at 12:28 in the main AIP room. He voted, he cast his ballot, he walked out, and then he checked in at the E&D lobby at 12:38 and voted there as well. So check-ins were 10 minutes apart. We've always been told that e-poll syncs every 3 minutes. Raised this to David at Knowing, and he said, well, it was only 10 minutes apart. He said, but it allowed him to go twice, and it was all in the same building, so there's no reason they shouldn't have been syncing. So this individual, we were finishing gathering. I pulled all the security footage we have of him entering and exiting the rooms at those times, and pulling all that information together, along with all what we do have from e-poll showing the 2 check-ins, and getting that prepared to hand over to the Secretary of State investigators to investigate, typically investigate instances of double voting, and then they'll do their investigation and they'll refer that to the Attorney General. So that's what we're working on to finish up pulling all the footage for that today. So I was able to get everything, all the time marks done. Just have to pull a video.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but does anyone have questions with regard to those 3 instances of quote double check-ins? And
One was the only duplicates we identified.
the only duplicates, okay. Yeah. Going back to the voter that voted in West Cobb on 10/25, then subsequently checked in but did not vote in North Cobb on 10/30. When you brought this to my attention and we had a conversation, when you go into Jarvis and review her audit history, can you just share, just so for the benefit of everybody, all of the board members, that her voter credit appears to have been updated to October 3rd? Right. Okay.
So what's odd, let's take a voter who has applied for an absentee ballot and then they decide to go vote in person instead, right? They're gonna have 2 lines on their absentee history. They're gonna show that they applied for a ballot and that was issued, and then it was canceled when they checked in and voted absentee in person. With this voter and with the gentleman who voted twice, instead of showing two separate lines, showing a credit for 1025 for this individual, the woman who voted checked it twice, and then a second line for 1030, it's only showing 1030. And the only way we're able to see in both her absentee history and her voter history, any type of proof that she also checked in on 1025 is when we look at her audit log, because it's not giving her double credit. It changed her credit from voting in this election on 1025 to 1030 with her second check-in. And the only way I'm able to know that is when I go into the audit log, I can see that there's a line saying credit assigned on 1025 by the system, which is that automatic sync between ePulse and Jarvis. So that's the only way we're able to identify. We can see she had two check-ins on ePulse, but she only has
1025 and 1030.
correct, but it only has the one credit on Jarvis.
On Jarvis. And so is this something that has, I believe this is something that's been reported to the Secretary of State.
All of these situations have been reported over email to both NOE and to the Secretary of State.
Okay.
So they're aware of the individual who's voted twice and waiting our information to hand over to the investigators.
Okay. But what I will refer to as the override, the ability, the systems overriding her 1025 credit with her 1030 credit based upon check-in. That ability, the fact that Jarvis allowed that, that's been reported to SOS.
Yes. We'll write a formal report because I think what's been tough is that there's been so many ePulse issues.
Mhm.
We've sent emails every single time we identify something during AIP that I need to gather all of those, put them together. That way nothing gets missed, because that's often what happens, is that we have several things happen at once and maybe we're able to fix one or two and then these other ones kind of fall through the cracks. We obviously don't want
When you're recording these, do you get any kind of response back from them, or is it like sending them into a black hole?
if I send a reef, it's typically a black hole, so I don't really send reef.
Really?
And if for the benefit of everyone
And it's
here,
like this, yes.
for the benefit of everyone, what's a reef?
A reef is like the IT support tickets when we have an issue. we send
It's a
it.
trouble ticket.
Yes. So I don't really do that. I just send emails to, senior staff and secretaries.
I guess my question is, are they even paying attention to what we're saying?
They were about this.
About the double credit. Okay.
The double credit though is ePulse's problem, not Jarvis, though, right?
Not for the individuals who actually checked in twice, no.
No, it's not ePulse's fault.
No, because they did check in twice, so they should have two checking credits, and they did.
Oh,
But the fact that,
that ePulse obviously didn't sync correctly with.
It should have come from, but yes, they did it intentionally.
I think that
Right.
I think that the way Jarvis is receiving that data is not allowing it to show two check-ins. So I think it's the way Jarvis is receiving that data.
the fact that Jarvis allowed it with respect to, I'm gonna call her the West Cobb, North Cobb check-in voter, the fact that Jarvis allowed the 1025 voter credit that had been assigned to be updated to 1030 based upon the 1030 check-in.
Okay.
And the only way.
Well,
we
it's
were able-
obvious it was intentional.
It's very clear it was intentional. She
However,
stopped
she-
shy of a felony because she didn't vote.
That's all.
It's still a violation of, yeah, she signed a voter oath, so she made a false statement, and there's other.
Well, that's a felony.
So that should be referred as well.
It will be.
Okay, so everyone talked about referring the gentleman from October the 28th, but it sounds like this person should be referred as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we have two referrals.
Yes, and then the third was just like I said, she wasn't checked in, so they checked her again, and then all of a sudden she had two
Well,
check-ins,
that-
but they were within a few minutes of each
So
other
there's
and
nothing.
full of her attendance with that.
So that's innocent.
Yes. And those were the only duplicates we, for those three voters.
And we don't know for certain that the gentleman, I mean, in theory, he could have voted and then he came back and voted at the elderly and disabled, so maybe he is elderly and disabled and didn't
Yes.
realize, like, he was just confused.
Okay.
You know, but-
Based on the footage, I was able to see he is very elderly.
Okay, so he could have just been
Yes,
confused.
it's just
and thought,
gonna
"I got
be-
to vote down here."
Not nefarious.
Just forgot.
I think, yeah, I think he was just very confused. Yes.
So I can give out things like that.
Well, you're still gonna give me a refrain from comment with regard to that statement.
So.
The flyer.
It's a little
I'll let
late.
the AG handle that one.
Just kind of following on to Ms. Afret's question with respect to these continuous issues that have been raised, and I believe, Director Fall, you were planning to kind of aggregate that list. If you will, and I don't know if I speak for others on the board, I personally would like to see a copy of that list or receive a copy of the list so that I have a full understanding of the issues. I know that we've talked about them as they've come up, but, or I believe we've talked about most of them as they've come up. But to understand the concerns that our office has raised with the Secretary of State and or knowing with respect to technology that we are required to use in the administration of this election and the concerns that have been raised about it, I think it's important for this board to minimally know what those are.
Absolutely.
How many of these issues do you think are related to that red cloud issue? The vast majority is, so they're very well aware of it, was documented over and over.
Yeah, I mean, but the red clouds have come up in connection with the election. My understanding is there were concerns with respect to Jarvis that predate the election, and so I just must be, they're very frank about
There
it.
were sinking issues in the presidential primary or
Right.
primary, one or the other. We had this sinking issue then, right?
It just wasn't,
It wasn't.
it wasn't at the scale because we didn't have the scale of voters, so I think that's, before it was like a dozen, I think.
And we had it.
But we had it, yeah.
But the sinking issue is, but, I mean, obviously it's had a critical impact here, but the sinking issue is but one issue that we've identified and raised with the Secretary of State and or knowing, right?
Yes.
There are other issues related to Jarvis that has impacted our county's ability to administer this.
The data changing from day to day, and the
Then there's-
reports we're getting back, then there's that, and not only that, addresses disappearing that were there the day before.
And these are just the technical
But
issues. We're not talking about the issues
No,
of
but they are.
information not being provided to us in a timely fashion
Yeah.
such that we can do what we need to do, such that
yeah,
allow voters to. So I just, again, think it's important for the
it's-
board to have a comprehensive list of the issues that we've experienced with respect to systems that are managed by SOS or Novi. Yes, Ms. Mossbach?
And I think, I know we sort of got on track, but did you want a motion for us to ask the Secretary of State directly from the board
For that deadline.
for that deadline? I feel like
Yes,
they
you're-
wanted to do that, so I just want to come back to that, because if we're gonna do that, that's something we should do today.
absolutely. That I'm but one vote. I do have an interest in trying to put some collars around this so that our team knows how to move forward. So if there is a motion that someone wants to raise, let's entertain it.
Well, I move that this board, address the Secretary of State regarding a debt and request a deadline for, what is the exact thing that we're requesting?
Probably the knowing reconciliation between, or the reconciliation between E-Pulse and Jarvis and the number of check-ins that we actually have.
prior to sort of, we need to put a date on it.
That was gonna get to the date, yes, so. Do you want to modify your motion and propose a date, and then we can, after it's been seconded during discussion, we can align on a date? Do you have a date in mind, Ms. Moss?
I mean, I would think that you would need it as soon as possible, and we know they're working over the weekend, so I would say by the end of Sunday, right, so you have all Monday.
Absolutely.
They
Sunday,
do on Saturday?
Saturday.
At 5 p.m.
Well, this is 5 o'clock, I don't know what time.
It's
it is,
4:45.
but On Friday, that doesn't give them any turn.
Sunday, 9 a.m.
That's more.
Okay, Sunday, so that's your motion.
That's my motion.
Okay, is there,
Pieces.
but I know that our able secretary has it all there.
Let me read what I got. Motion to address the Secretary of State and request a deadline for reconciliation between the E-Pulse and Jarvis votes by Sunday 9 a.m.
Does that sound correct with regard to what you are in need of? Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the motion as recited by our secretary. Is there any further discussion? Nope. Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No abstentions, the motion passes. If we will cut and paste that into the email so we can draft that one. I'll work with you, Jeff.
That's all I had.
Anything further? Okay. think that's not.
I would like to maybe request that the state election board be copied on the meeting, just for grins and giggles.
I have no, I personally agree with you. Did anyone else?
To document it, because if there are issues that come up after the fact, then we're playing.
Okay. We will be certain to, copy members of the SCB on that. Anything further, election, with respect to election office, reports or updates?
A lot more on Tuesday.
I would imagine as much. Next up on the agenda, if there are no additional questions for Director Fall with respect to the updates that she's provided or the materials that we've reviewed. Obviously, we've had an extensive conversation. We've shared with her the items that we believe we need, in addition to what we normally receive for next Tuesday's certification meeting. Next item on the agenda is board member comments.
I do have a comment.
Yes.
I am still concerned about a lot of the ways that some things have occurred on the ballots and the absentee ballots. We would think it would be absentee. I am just curious, do we have a clue on how many were returned because of bad addresses that we spent $64 to send?
So you're asking for return of absentee ballots that were sent to the 3,419, as we call them, the affected voters. Okay, that is a request that we're,
The only reason I ask it, and I'm, been sleeping with these reports from the Secretary of State, and the fact that you would have a mailing address one day and then the next day it's reformatted, the number is in the address, a street name, vice versa, flipped, seeing all kinds of weird things like that. I'm just curious how many we've had returned
can we make that?
because of non-deliverable. You can make it after the fact.
I was just gonna ask if we can
That's
provide
fine,
that
but
at the meeting.
because of the report sent to you all earlier, the return thing does concern me.
Understood.
And same for regular absentee. I wasn't necessarily looking for this until it started occurring on who voted.
Okay, well, I have plenty of comments. I will defer my comments to the actual certification meeting, but with respect to, that concern, I have a similar concern, having been here in the wee hours of the morning, ensuring that those ballots were issued, pulling labels, directly from Jarvis information, where the address appeared one way, printed differently. Those are legitimate concerns, and I think if we just give Director Fall an opportunity, minimally with regard to the 3,419, to provide that information to us at the meeting, but more universally as it relates to all absentee, yes, we can get that in.
I just thought this would be a small sampling
Absolutely.
and a good way to audit.
Yep.
The problems that is obviously pervasive, because we aren't just talking the affected voters, that I've seen the problem in the reports.
Okay. So it sounds like you'll have that, just as it relates to the 3419, recognizing that once we get beyond certification, doing a bit more diligence around return mail, across all of ABM would be helpful to have. Does anyone, did you have further comments, Mr. Fisher?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone else have any board member comments?
And like you will defer to the
Certification. Okay. If there are none, Mr. White, a need for executive session?
These days, there always is, but no, we actually, there's nothing that we need to talk about before Tuesday. I can,
Okay.
so if you want to put it off till Tuesday, that's fine, but we do have several. I think I've kept trying to keep you up to date by email or all the cases that.
I was just gonna say, no offense, but I'm kind of tired of it. So the sooner we can get out of here.
Nothing that, between now and Tuesday, that I need anything.
I think we all agree.
I think I absolutely.
So I don't think anybody,
I was gonna say,
so once I have unanimous agreement.
go big, bring that one down. November the 8th at 6:50
Yeah,
p.m.
right, amen.
All right, well, if there is nothing further, our next meeting, obviously will be our certification.
There's one.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I found out when the comps team got here that the boardroom is unavailable.
That is correct.
to
Ross
give
did
to an all
tell me that when I walked in.
Yeah, so we have options. We can either have the meeting here in this format, we can have the meeting here in one of the larger rooms format, or we can explore other county venues.
And my understanding is there's a larger room at the Civic Center potentially, as well as, and I think Mr. Kevin is walking. I am right on cue.
Did we not have it reserved?
Mr. Cabot, we have reached the point where we are talking about the location of next Tuesday's meeting.
So we've been doing some work out here while you're in here. We prefer to do it here in training room A. But we have other options that include the Civic Center's meeting room, which is open as well, and I have inquiries out to the Superior Court's jury assembly room.
That's a nice room. Okay,
Parking and security.
right. Does anyone have a preference?
How many does the large room here hold?
Training room A,
Yeah.
with chairs in there, we have staff meetings in there with over 100 people, so we can fit a large number of people with just chairs in there.
It looks like a little bit bigger than the Civic Center room.
Yeah, all the equipment for the cameras. Just put chairs in there.
Do we have that many chairs here?
That seems like a decent option.
Is there video in there? Will
I
we be
believe,
able to stream it?
We've got our equipment here. We will store it here until Tuesday.
right, so there will be the ability to stream. And then we'll obviously just situate it such that, it's a regular meeting, so we can accommodate public comment.
Yep, we've got that planned out.
I
So,
prefer here as opposed to Civic Center or other locations.
so it sounds like we're all in agreement that the meeting, location will change to our office, training room A for next Tuesday's meeting at 3 p.m.
Regarding security, or any,
We'll have 2 sheriffs here as well. We have the contact I have there, and I can also seek for more if that's the board's desire.
I mean, that is a fair point.
I know we can't have that here, but we just need to think about what, I don't have an answer right now until what security is.
Yeah, I can talk to Chief Gorski and who's my contact with the SO and
Right.
See what we can come up with. I would think 2, if not 3. So we could have one in the room, one outside the room, or one in the front of the room, one in the back of the room, and one outside the room roaming.
Which is consistent with what we have over there.
At 150, yeah.
Okay.
So we might want to do visitor badges or something so that if people decide that they want to roam around, they're identified.
Yes, you can definitely do that, absolutely.
And then I guess just making certain that there is appropriate signage, and to that point, they will enter
In
the rotunda, or they'll enter main lobby.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we ask everyone to enter there, and then they can get a badge there, and then we can. support them through.
Okay, because obviously that's a key, an access key to entrance.
Yes, yeah,
Don't get the main lobby behind us.
Yeah.
yes. It's just easier with access control to have it.
All right, anything further? So, next meeting will take place next Tuesday here at 995 Roswell in, training at 3 p.m. If there is nothing further, the meeting is adjourned at 4:54 p.m.